And just when you think it doesn't get any worse, we get this big document. It's given to us on Friday at 5:37 p.m. of last week. So a Friday dump. We had sued for records to from the Justice Department about that coup discussion that took place between Andrew McCabe and Rod Rosenstein of the Justice Department, where they talked about wearing a wire on the president, invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office, and appointing a special counsel. All part of the coup. Rosenstein said he was only being sarcastic, and we have the documents from the Justice Department through this lawsuit, again a lawsuit, not voluntarily disgorged to us, confirming essentially that Rosenstein did make this discussion. He says it was sarcastic, and they had an anonymous source tell the newspapers, the New York Times, that it was sarcastic, but he's never really gone on the record as to what happened. And he had a cagey response about the 25th Amendment discussion, which left open the possibility, and essentially confirming the possibility, that he discussed misusing the 25th Amendment to remove the President of the United States. Well, then we get another document, and this document is a memo written by Andrew McCabe. In many ways, not a reliable witness, but according to the document, it was a contemporaneous recordation written shortly after the meeting that took place on May 16th, 2017, in which the coup was discussed. They didn't call it a coup, but that's what it was. If two generals were meeting, talking about removing the president and wearing a wire on the president in order to justify removing him, you'd call it a coup, wouldn't you? Well, that's what two senior officials in the law enforcement, the acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe at the time, most senior guy in the FBI, acting attorney general for the purposes of this discussion, Rod Rosenstein. Listen to this out of control, contemporaneous recollection of the main topics they discussed. This is McCabe writing. I began by telling him, Rosenstein, they went over to Rosenstein's office, Rosenstein, I forget how it's pronounced. I began by telling him that today I approved the opening of an investigation of President Donald Trump. I explained that the purpose of the investigation was to investigate allegations of possible collusion between the president and the Russian government, possible obstruction of justice related to the firing FBI Director James Comey, and possible conspiracy to obstruct justice. The DAG question, the DAG being the Deputy Attorney General, Rosenstein, questioned what I meant by collusion, and I explained that I was referring to the investigation of any potential links between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. I explained that counterintelligence investigations of this sort were meant to uncover any existence of any threat to national security, as well as whether or not criminal conduct has occurred. What was the basis for all of this? Counterintelligence investigations are designed to investigate intelligence, foreign governments. You can't use them to do a criminal investigation. And he goes on to say that he was basing this on an interview that Trump had with Lester Holt about the firing of Comey and the memos that Comey illegally kept at his home. He didn't say they were illegally kept, but these are the spy memos that Comey wrote on the president. Comey had them. Why didn't he conduct a criminal investigation of President Trump? Because he knew the memos didn't justify a criminal investigation of President Trump. And they're ticked that their buddy Comey was fired, and they're talking about investigating him in retaliation. Again, whistleblower in chief. Then the Lester Holt interview, the NBC's Lester Holt interview, they use that all the time in a dishonest way against President Trump. Because the way and I'm going on memory here, but you can look it up online. Because President Trump says, well, I fired Comey because of Russia. Well, he says, A, it was in part because of Russia. And B, he goes on to say, even though I knew it might extend the investigation. He wasn't doing it to obstruct and stop the investigation. He was doing it because he was offended by the way Comey was operating and didn't trust him. And rightly so, it looks like. He wanted it stopped. It wasn't stopped. And he knew it wasn't going to be stopped. He tells Lester Holt, I knew it would lengthen the investigation because of the change in FBI directors. There's no basis for a criminal investigation. Have the acting FBI director just decide he can investigate the president and a whole based on that? And then he goes on to tell Rosenstein, you're a witness. Like he's running the show. And of course, Rosenstein, rather than responding, saying, get out of my office, you're fired, you can't do this, he starts dissing on Trump. Going through this he began by stating, this is Rosenstein talking, that he had the feeling the decision to fire the director had been made before he arrived. So what? You fire people. There are many reasons you fire people. You may settle on a course and you want further feedback as you proceed. Nothing inappropriate about that, but they think they're immune from scrutiny and accountability in the deep state. And he met with Donald McCann, who told him that the president had drafted a letter that McCann did not want the president to send. Oh boy, the president once again, who answers to who? The White House lawyers? The DOJ attorneys? The president's supposed to answer to them? And he talks about how the president then directed Rosenstein to write a memo explaining the reasoning for Director Comey's termination and that the DAG should include Russia. Rosenstein said that the president, he did not think this was a good idea, and that his memo did not need to include Russia. So the allegation is that the president was firing Comey to shut down the Russia investigation, when in fact, and in an improper way, when in fact the president wanted the world to know, yeah, he was screwing up on Russia. And the reason it wasn't in the Rosenstein memo that was ultimately written was because the Justice Department decided they didn't want to put it in there. And then listen to this. As our conversation continued, this is the conversation that Rosenstein's having with McCabe. The DAG proposed that he could potentially wear a recording device into the Oval Office to collect additional evidence of the president's true intentions. He said he thought this might be possible because he had not searched. He said he thought this might be possible because he was not searched when he entered the White House. I told him that I would discuss the opportunity with my investigative team and get back to him. Now, I understand McCabe is writing a CYA memo in some fashion here. But why would he respond if this is accurate to Rosenstein's suggestion of wearing a wire with offer to do follow-up with his investigators if he understood him to be joking? And then they talked about the appointment of a special counsel. They already had two people lined up, Rosenstein did. Obviously, one of them was Mueller. Lots of redactions. So I'm sure this is the 25th Amendment discussion that the FBI is withholding from us. And then later, Rosenstein says to McCabe, McCabe recounts at the end of the memo, you got a credibility problem because you said you weren't involved in your wife's campaign. Remember, McCabe's wife was running for a state Senate seat in Virginia? Gets a boatload of money from a Clinton-connected Terry McAuliffe, then governor of Virginia, while McCabe is, quote, supposedly the FBI is investigating McAuliffe and the Clintons. And Rosenstein says, well, you told us you weren't involved in the campaign, and there are pictures of you with your wife's campaign shirt on. And McCabe goes, oh, no, I had permission. It's not a problem. So what I love about this memo is the kind of the subtext. The subtext is McCabe runs over to Rosenstein and says, you know what, I'm investigating the president and you're a witness. And Rosenstein folds immediately and starts providing, quote, testimony to McCabe. Offers to wear a wire on the president. They probably go on to discuss the 25th Amendment. It's pretty clear that took place. We have the other documents and their other reporting on it. And then Rosenstein figures out, I'm going to push back on McCabe. You got a credibility problem. And McCabe says, oh yeah, well, I'm okay on that. Talk about rats in a box, huh? Two senior leaders of our law enforcement discussing wearing a wire on the President of the United States because they didn't like his decision-making to fire the corrupt crony of an FBI director, their buddy James Comey. And what are we talking about? A call he made to Ukraine to investigate the same gang that was protecting Biden and targeting him. This is why they don't want you to focus on it, because this is the corruption. The Spygate corruption. This is a big deal. None of the major media picked it up. None of the major media picked it up. Because they're protecting the coup cabal targeting Trump, because they're in on it too. The initial reporting on this whistleblower was ridiculously false. And they don't care. There's no accountability. Judicial Watch is a more independent, reliable reporter of details of the deep state, the way our government really operates in Washington, D.C., than the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC, you name it. We do real journalism. Those media I just talked to you about are liberal advocacy groups that sometimes do journalism, mostly report gossip, and are vehicles for government officials to undermine our republic through criminal activity. Criminal leaks, classified information, the leaks of classified information. I tell you, I thank God for Judicial Watch, because we're the only ones in town doing this key work to uncover what's really going on.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.